Welcome back, fellow travel warriors. I'm Steve.
And I'm George.
Join us as we unpack the challenges, excitement, preparation,
and passion for travel.
Well, George, here we are again. How's Oklahoma, Bixby, Oklahoma, Tulsa area? How's the weather out there today?
It's going to be nice. Cool in the morning. This time of the year through April, it gets like 30 degrees in the morning. By the afternoon, it's 75. So almost a winter coat when you get up, and then you're in shorts and a t-shirt by 5 o'clock.
Awesome. Well, yesterday we had a veteran stand down event in Phoenix that I was part of, and we got there early, and we got done early in the afternoon, and so I took the advantage of going out to a mountainside trail that I like and enjoyed it, but it was kind of warm. When it's past 85. If between 85 and 90 degrees, it gets uncomfortable when you're hiking. You got to catch your breath, get some water, that kind of thing. And so today, I believe it's going to cool down. There's going to be some cloud cover. So tomorrow, actually, even more so. I have to take advantage of all the hiking days that I can as the scorching heat is around the corner. So, but I did want to talk today on this episode in particular, something that's been kind of frustrating and bugging me because pre-pandemic, you get to the point where you can actually afford, you get old enough and you have a few extra dollars for travel and traveling, and you're able to start staying in some nice properties, 4-diamond, 5-star, that kind of thing. And now, post-pandemic, it seems like everything that is affecting the middle class, as far as getting squeezed out of the home, being able to buy a home. I think the same thing is happening and has happened to. I wouldn't call it luxury travel, but I would call it upscale travel. To be able to enjoy not staying in a Hampton Inn or staying in a hotel where you're going to be close to all the best that a city offers, that would be optimal in my opinion. I was looking at Sedona. Of course, this is the spring break time. I know that the rates are going to be elevated in the Phoenix Scottsdale area. I know this. I've lived there for a long time. But even with that being the fact, I think the hotels are really they're just really gouging. I looked at, this weekend, for instance, since we're lifetime Diamond members, we would always look at a Hilton first, right? Mm-hmm. Because we get the added benefits. If I want to stay in a balcony, 1-bedroom at the Hilton in Sedona this weekend, you're talking $700 a night. Actually, wow. No, the room type that I've stayed in at that resort, that we have stayed in at that resort, is actually $1,150 a night. That's before taxes. And then you have, if you want to convert that to points, you're looking at spending 432,000 points a night. I mean, you're really giving away the farm to spend one night there. If you had a family of 4, I guess your option B would be to stay at a Hampton Inn in suites, something like that. But that's $335 a night. So I think it's just mind-boggling to me. Some of these, being in the West Coast, being out in Phoenix, and when you think vacationing locally, you're thinking San Diego, you're thinking San Francisco, Laguna Beach, maybe Central California. You're thinking Santa Barbara. Perhaps if you want to go to Mexico, Los Cabos would be a nice alternative. You want to stay at the Hilton Los Cabos, forget it. I mean, you're going to spend probably $1,300, $1,500 a night. So that's really kind of frustrating, the trending that I see in the cost of hotels. I mean, it's not like you're trying to stay at the Ritz-Carlton. We're just talking 4-diamond hotels, by and large. A little bit better than the Hampton Inn and suites, so you get the experience, and you have the convenience. Right. You have the restaurants. And you could say to yourself, well, why don't you just stay in an Airbnb? If we would have stayed in an Airbnb in the Polanco neighborhood of Mexico City, we wouldn't have had the experience we had when my son and I went to see the UFC fight night. We stayed at the same hotel with all the UFC production staff, all the UFC personalities, and some marquee fighters. We wouldn't have had access to them. So I think for me, an Airbnb might be a good value depending on the trip and the activities planned. Could be a savings over staying in a hotel, but I think the hotel experience with your room service and being able to get out of your room, go to the hotel lobby bar, maybe the gym, I think it's still a better experience overall when you're traveling. I think the Airbnb for me I might look at it like an extended stay. And then I was thinking of what is the alternative if you have to compromise and the rates are too high for a prime location 4 diamond hotel. What would be the alternative? And I think maybe staying at an extended stay might be an alternative. Staybridge with IHG, maybe Homewood Suites by Hilton, maybe something like that. I think I did look at that. We talked about extended stay last weekend, and so I looked at Marriott has a product called Element, and Element is an extended stay product. And I've never stayed in one, but guess what? They have one in Sedona. And actually, I looked at the rates, and they're probably under 300. So that probably would be my go-to this weekend. If I had to go, if I really needed to go, I would probably stay at a Marriott Westin Element product, and it looked really nice. So it's something that's in my plans is to go stay there on our next trip to Sedona and try that out. Those are some of the challenges about travel. What's your take on this? Exorbitant rates for hotels that you and I would typically be our go-to, where now we're thinking, hey, we either need to change the dates of travel, we need to change the room type at the property to maybe save some money. What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely the rates and the points redemption has really gotten out of control. Do you remember, Steve, probably, now this is a long time ago, maybe 10 years, 15 years ago, Priority Club IHG had, forget what they call it. It came out every quarter where you could redeem on certain hotels around the world for 5 or 10,000 points. And I think Hilton had something similar. It wasn't as cheap. But I remember this was probably 2008, 2009 when Priority Club had that 5,000 a night redemption for certain hotels around the world. They had the Intercontinental in Bora Bora for 5,000 points a night.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Now, I was, poor back then. And then, the cost of flying there in my mind was so high, even though I had easily 5,000 points, how would I even get there? Now, I track certain hotels and certain destinations of where I want to go in the future. And the resorts over in Tahiti and Bora Bora, I kind of check on occasion. And you can't even, every time I look, most of the time, it's sold out. So to think, let's say 15 years ago, that you can get it for 5,000 points a night, now you can't even get it. So it is really the devaluation of points. As we've discussed, I do a lot of, we're blessed to have a lot of reward points through our work. So a lot of our travel that I do, we do with points redemption. And it has totally gotten out of control the last handful of years. In the last couple of years, it's terrible. Where in a particular city, a Hampton Inn used to be 10,000 a night, 15, maybe 20, and now I looked at Miami, and again, like we talked about, it's spring break, it's March, but you look at a Hampton Inn in Miami, and it starts at 50,000. My
That's
dad and my dad and his wife will travel to Wichita, Kansas, and there's a Hampton Inn outside of Wichita and Derby that was going for 30 or 40,000 points a night. That's insane.
And George, I think I read some fine print a few years ago regarding how hotels integrate the point system for people using points in their hotel. And I believe what Hilton corporate reimburses the owners of the hotels for guests who are utilizing points is simply covering their operating costs. And so that's how they factor in how many points they're going to charge. But I don't know if that policy has gone out the window, and the owners of these Hiltons or hotels or in these family hotel groups are arbitrarily just choosing just a number out of the air and telling their corporate that, hey, we're not gonna allow guests to come in to our property and spend 25,000 points. We're having staffing shortages. There's increase in payroll. There's the higher operating costs. So now we are going to charge 75,000 a night for redemption. And so I don't know. I mean, I'd love to get a conversation or someone that works at Hilton Corporation to kind of take that apart for us and how they negotiate or allow these owners who are franchise properties to charge guests that much. Me being in Phoenix, it should be no big deal. In the past, it was no big deal for me to think of, on a Wednesday or Thursday, all of a sudden decide to go to San Diego on the fly, or go to Orange County, or, there's a mixed martial event coming up in LA on April 27th that I'm very interested in attending. This is something would be easy because Matthew lives in San Diego. He can meet me up in LA. I don't know exactly where the venue is, but LA has a lot of hotels, and you figure, well, I could probably find a decent place to stay without breaking the bank. But even the flights have gotten so outrageous. Went to Harlingen, Texas, South Padre Island, last December, and it was $400 each way to go to Harlingen from Phoenix. This is insanity, because of course now when you travel anywhere now, like for instance, my brother's going to be coming down from the Bay Area in early May for a visit. We're treating him out to a really nice restaurant, dinner, steakhouse. I know he's spending a lot of money to come here for a weekend. I recognize that. And it's a lot of money to travel anywhere, even if it's not even that far. Even if it's only an hour away flight, you're spending a lot of money. So what are some of what I know that you label yourself as being somewhat frugal, but I think you're just smart with your money and you're looking for value. I think we all need to look for value first. Sure, who doesn't want to stay in a 5-star hotel, Forbes 5-star hotel? Anyone would want to. But now we got to look at ways of mitigating the cost so that we can enjoy the rest of the trip, because we don't spend 24 hours in our hotel. There's excursions, there's museums, there's souvenirs, you have the food, there's incidentals, tips, and etc. What are the first couple things that you do? I know that you've got a site that is your go-to when you look at flights. And if you're going to go to the Hilton site and you see you're going to have to break the bank in points to use points to mitigate the cost, what are a couple of your strategies to to kind of keep those costs down to maybe not even an optimal level, but maybe to a level where you're saying, hey, it is what it is. We're still going on the trip.
Yeah, Steve, as we've discussed, I'm in the middle of trying to see all the 14 wonders of the world, man-made and natural. I have them kind of planned out over the next several years. So I sort of know where I'm going. So I research it in advance. I check out what kind of the cost is, the best time of the year to go. So the cost of the flight, the hotels. And so I have an idea of what that is, right? And then I'll go to the Hilton site or I'll go to the IHG site and kind of see what the points are. And then from there, I'll also check some Airbnbs. So to see so if the points are too high for Hilton and it's going to wipe out a large amount of points that I have, then I'll look at an Airbnb. And if it's reasonable, I will, stay at the Hilton property or the IHG property. And so one of the things I was sort of thinking about is, and I know you and I discussed this previously in private, this was probably 2015 and 16. I wanted to go to the pyramids in Egypt. And so I got on the Hilton site and I looked, and I was shocked to find that the Hilton at the pyramids, it cost 10,000 points a night. Couldn't believe it. So we went there. We had a trip to Dubai, and on the second leg of the trip, we went to Egypt, stayed in Luxor at the Hilton in Luxor, right on the Nile River, and then we stayed at the Hilton. And now it was a rundown or a worn hotel at the time. They were just going to start renovations, but it was still 10,000 points a night. And because again, like you said, you're not staying there at the hotel. We had kind of gone exploring. We're only there for a couple of nights. So I've checked since then, and it's been 10,000, 10,000. Well, during Christmas time, I checked again. We went in February around Valentine's Day, and I checked in around Christmas time for February. When I checked it, it was the standard room was at 50,000. I thought, wow. So they did the renovation, and maybe tourism was back in 2017. A lot of hotels in Egypt were down because of the potential terrorist threat, but couldn't believe that it went to 50,000, so high. Now I did check here this week, that same property, it was 30,000 there at the pyramids, and this is for April. I checked the Hilton in Luxor was 30,000. So what got me thinking was, let me check some other hotels that we've been at and kind of compare if it's gone up or down. And so in 2018, we stayed at the Hilton Garden Inn in Bangkok in Hong Kong. When we stayed, it was 30,000. Now it's 40,000. In 2019, we stayed at the DoubleTree in Cairns, Australia. We paid 25,000 points a night. For the same dates in August of this year, it's 35,000 points a night. In 2021, so our first trip after the pandemic had started, was to the Hilton in Cartagena, Colombia. And we got pretty lucky. It was probably about 18,500 points a night, something like that. We'll just call it 20,000. It is now 50,000 points a night for that hotel. So a huge jump. Other ones, in 2022, we went to Peru. We stayed at the Hilton Garden Inn in Cusco. We got it for 21,000 points a night. Now it's up to 40,000 points a night. Now, we also stayed in Lima at a Hilton Garden Inn, and that actually went down for the same dates. It was 30,000 points a night a couple of years ago. Now it's 25,000 points a night. But one that I had tracked for a long time was the DoubleTree in Agra, India. That's where the Taj Mahal is. And I've tracked that one probably since 2017, since the pyramids, since that's one of the seven wonders of the world. And that one had always been 10,000 points a night. Couldn't believe it. The pictures on the Hilton website, it looks beautiful. how can that property be only 10,000 points a night? And so when we had our trip to India last year, it was 10,000 points a night. We stayed, I believe, 2 or 3 nights there, and it's great. I mean, it's fantastic. Now, at Christmas time, this past Christmas, I checked just to kind of see what it was, and it was 30,000 points. I couldn't believe it. Like, it tripled. And you look at it as it's tripled. It's
Right.
been 10,000 for so long, and now it's tripled. Now, I did check it this week just to see in April, and it ranged depending on the day of the month from 16,000 to 27,000, which is still great value. Compared to what we've talked about, some hotels that cost so much. Now, we'll talk about here shortly, but one of the places where they have two of the 14 wonders of the world is in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. They have the Christ the Redeemer, and then they have the bay itself. So I've been tracking for that trip the last couple of years, and the Hilton at the Copacabana beach was 35 a year ago. It was 35,000 points a night, standard room rate. Now it's 50. So, that has gone up. I believe, and we've talked about it, that vacationing in the US is super expensive. Flights,
I agree.
hotels, car rentals, obviously post pandemic in 2021, 2022, with the shortage of rental cars, how crazy the prices were to travel in the US, to vacation in the US, to go to Florida, to go to Phoenix, to go to California, in the summertime to go to Utah, to go to some of these places. It's outrageous. And so we've discussed, you and I, that I think there's value in traveling outside the country, going down to Central America, going to South America, um, if I really believe this, if you kind of have an idea where you want to go and you really plan for it, you can get great deals.
Maybe a
You can
better
really,
value actually going out of the
yeah.
country. Honduras, El Salvador, places in Mexico, South America, Argentina, maybe Uruguay, Chile. I'm sure, if you do the research, you're probably going to find, as far as the hotel lodging, a great value compared to the US when it comes to room and tax and or point expenditure.
hmm There's a lot of cheap flights out of Miami going to Lima, Peru, Cartagena, Colombia, Panama City, Panama. Just have to look for them. Now, may not want to go there, right? So, but those are some beautiful places, and for some folks that are just stuck on vacationing in the U.S. And obviously, there's a lot of beautiful places in the United States to go visit. You feel safe. You speak the language. Of course, those are all, people kind of get scared. There's a person that we work with in October, and last October we were talking, and she's planning a trip with her family down to Costa Rica. And when Zoraida and I went in 2018, Zoraida speaks Spanish. And so you don't have to worry about the language barrier, right? One of her fears was going down there and not being able to speak language. Now, a lot of these countries do speak English, but what if you run into somebody at a car rental or at the airport or somewhere that doesn't speak English, and then you're sort of stuck. And so I get that, but I really do believe that if you do plan from the flights to hotels, I think there could be a lot of value going out of the country you'll be surprised that the flights may be just as expensive or less to go out of the country as it is to fly across the country in the US. So I encourage people to kind of do some research, and try to go somewhere, kind of, expand your horizons. Try to go somewhere out of your comfort zone. We've met people that, and I'll just be back up. I speak for myself. Up until 2016, I thought going out of the country, flying to some of these places, was out of reach. It cost too much. There's no way. And I remember I found a website called secretflying.com. And this website, and I'll put it in the description below, tracks. I mean, it just gives you deals. It just sends you deals on flights around the world, out of the U.S. You can set it up, for flights in the U.S. or out of the U.S. And they used to have a really good app that if you kind of put everything in there, what you were looking for, it would send you updates every day. Now that app is gone. They do it through the website. You can get emails sent, but it's so convenient through your phone to get updates all the time. But when I was looking at some of the costs to fly, I was shocked. I mean, some flights out of New York or Boston to Rome or Paris for, $350 round trip. I couldn't believe it. So, and I realized that one of the search engines they use is one called Momondo. I would go on there and kind of verify some of the flights. I know there's a lot of, and I can't think of them all, Skyscanner. I know there's a lot of Google Flights. They have a lot of those. But I will use some of those websites to kind of get a general idea. And for me personally, I always like booking through the airline. I really don't like going through third parties. I know a lot of people do it, but for me personally, if on the third party, the round trip is, let's say, $400, and it's a good deal, and I go straight to that airline, and let's say it costs $425, I'd rather pay the $425 and know I'm dealing directly with the airline as opposed to a third party. And that's just me. We're all different. So that's sort of one of the things. But I do plan a lot of these way in advance because I know kind of where I want to go, and it's worked out pretty well.
Well, I think for a lot of the families, I mean, even though I have a son, he's not a minor. We're not taking trips to Disneyland. You don't have kids. But I feel bad for, the typical family of 4 or 5 that would like to take a trip out to Disneyland or Disney World in Florida. And we haven't even touched on the cost of rental cars or gas.
Mm-hmm.
When you do the rental return and the gas is $6 per gallon. So it's just really sad to see how the cost is becoming, it's for the hardworking family, it's going to be very hard for them to take a trip, even in the States. I think that you really have to be good at looking at if you have AAA membership, if you are a veteran, if you're a first responder, if you have some kind of association with the group that can get discounts. I know that sometimes, or actually our go-to strategy is always to look at Amex Travel, because if we look at our membership rewards, we try to see, what's the best value we can for hotels in their collection cluster of hotels that they have. Oftentimes those sound very expensive, but when you really look at it, they have negotiated rates, and some are pretty good. And I believe when you book through Amex Travel, the 5th night is free. Plus you get some of the benefits include a 4 p.m. checkout. It's almost like having another day. So you have to be really creative. You have to do your research. I know that you'll put some of these links in our channel for some of our audience to take a look at. Maybe they've never looked at these sites to mitigate costs so that we can continue, this journey of passion for travel and the experiences that we gain from it. We don't want to certainly stop. I think it certainly enriches our life, and everyone's a little bit stressed out. And if anything, if you hear the news now, it's record travel. Travel is higher than pre-pandemic, and people are shelling out the money for it. Hopefully they're not putting it on a 30% interest rate credit card, because that trip's going to be outrageously expensive for them. But I think people are doing it regardless of what it takes. So this kind of wraps up our conversation around the cost of travel, especially to aspirational destinations, is becoming unaffordable. And thanks for sharing some of the tips and some of your experiences and your observations on the hotels and utilizing points and all that kind of thing. So thank you for joining us. We want you to join our ever-growing community of travel warriors. And let's continue this journey together.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on our latest episodes. Until next time, safe travels.